So I'll introduce the speakers that we have tonight, and we'll run through what is the toolkit, why did we develop it, the strategy, theory of change, and concept, and that will be presented by Kieran. We'll do a little visual tour and look at some of the standout content that the people in community who we've been working with have identified as like the most important parts for them. We will also hear from two of our incredible organisers, Wendy Farmer and Daryl Best. If we go to the next slide, I'll introduce them in more detail. So Daryl is right above me in my little visual thing here. Daryl's an ex-coal miner, now a powerful renewables advocate. Daryl is the darling of the Illawarra, and he's a member of Good for the Gong, a pro-renewables group in the Illawarra that prioritizes good jobs, good community benefits, and renewables that are good for nature. Daryl is determined to see the transition to renewables include coal and fossil fuel workers, as well as benefit nature and a better future for his grandkids. Wendy is the darling of Gippsland. She is the president of Voices of the Valley, formed in 2014 after the catastrophic Hazelwood brown coal mine fire, which burned for more than 6 weeks and blanketed nearby towns in toxic smoke and ash. Since then, Wendy has been focusing on developing renewables organising in Gippsland and is an organiser for Yes2Renewables and has done incredible work in community all across Gippsland, helping communities find their place in the renewables transition and to really advocate for the best benefits for the Gippsland area. Kieran is an energy justice researcher and my toolkit co-author. He is the statistical and research brains behind the toolkit. Recently working with us to develop the toolkit, Kieran has aimed to harness the shift to renewables as a tool to embed equitable energy access and community benefits within the landscape of a renewables future. Thank you. That was a mouthful. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pass to Kieran, and I'm just going to invite everybody to, as we go through this, keep your thing on mute, and please have your video on if you're comfortable, because it's really beautiful seeing everybody's faces and reactions and feeling like we're in a community here. And we'll have a question and answer at the end of the session. And I think Kieran's also got some fun interactive aspects as well. So please sit back, enjoy. I really hope you can take something away that feels meaningful to you, because we are working towards something together. We're working towards a beautiful opportunity to advocate for what an entire new industry might look like and how it could benefit people, community, jobs, and nature. It's an amazing opportunity, but we all have to work on it from the ground up. So sit back, relax, and I'm passing to Kieran.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm just sad to not be the darling of anywhere.
You're the darling of Yes2Renewables, Kieran.
Uh, so I grew up in the north of Ireland in Derry, so you can consider me the darling of there. But I've also been working with Yes2Renewables kind of and the team in Coco on this toolkit. And so I kind of figured it would be a good idea to kind of answer preemptively the question, why did we do it? Before I do like to have like a little bit of like Zoom call and response. So if you have your screen on, uh, get ready. If you don't, I'll give you some extra instructions. So we have like a range of different experiences and different communities and different campaigns who have kind of like informed the toolkit with like their lessons, their wins, and their questions. And it would be great to kind of get a fun sample of who is where in their journey in the room today. So if you are someone who is like worried, feel like you want to do something but haven't just started, uh, either hold something red up to the screen or kind of drop like a red emoji into the chat. And if you're someone who is working with other people, is kind of like part of a group or a campaign, or kind of feels knowledgeable about these issues, hold up something blue or kind of drop a blue emoji into the chat. And then finally, if you're someone who is kind of really on this, or kind of, maybe we featured some of your work and some of the lessons we've drawn have kind of come from your campaigning, hold up something green or kind of, flash a green emoji in the chat. And then like we'll try and kind of organize like the discussion and experiences towards the end of the presentation to make sure that we're kind of covering entry points or kind of things of interest to kind of people where they're at as well. So the point of the toolkit is to kind of help you no matter what stage of your journey you're on, and kind of you can slot in whatever step you like. So on the why, so like so I'll be going over the context, the threats, the opportunities, and kind of the strategy that this toolkit represents. So next slide. If we just move on in the slides.
Next slide, Pat.
Yeah, so I'm sure many of you know us already, but like so Yes2Renewables, we kind of like help organize, mobilize, and empower communities to kind of create the conditions for a faster and fairer shift to renewable energy. And this is done mainly alongside communities, workers, and mainly in regional Australia. And so it's like really amazing to see so many people like represented today from such like a wide variety of places. So I'm in Melbourne, Narm on Wurundjeri country, and it's just really exciting kind of seeing all the different kind of places flash up in the chat as well. So if we move to the next slide. And so fundamentally, what we're interested in is developing local leaders and voices from within communities who can like advocate for their own best interests and the local benefits and outcomes that not only protect the environment that they love, but also kind of help embed and kind of ensure a cleaner energy future for Australia. And so Y2R, the campaign, it's kind of we're based at the environmental justice organization Friends of the Earth and have been organizing on renewable energy for over 13 years. And so that kind of informs this toolkit is kind of like a history of those years and is kind of drawn from the testimony of a lot of different campaigners and kind of groups that we've worked with as well. So if we move to the next slide. So yeah, we have a lot to work with, and a lot of we know that Australia will generate 82% of its power from renewables by 2030. So the renewable energy transition is no longer a question of when. In many places, it's already here. But we see polling where only 8% of Australians could have named that figure, or at least could do that in 2025. So next slide. We have dates and estimates for when all coal-fired power plants will close. And so AEMO estimates that this will be by 2038. And so again, this isn't something that I think a lot of people
Have a lot.
uh, are
Steph.
fully kind of aware of. So next slide. And we know that the public supports renewable energy, and kind of there's broad support for the renewable energy transition, regardless of where you are or kind of where you choose to make your home in Australia. So in 2024, we saw a huge poll of 6,700 people state that almost 9 in 10 Australians support the shift to renewable energy. Next slide. we found that this stays constant even in the regions. So, the narrative of kind of resistance or hesitance around renewables that's kind of being spread there isn't fully accurate or reflective of like the situation on the ground. So, next slide. And yeah, and this stays constant even when you look at communities directly in renewable energy zones. So kind of people support the shift to wind and solar. So next slide. But we have a problem where we know that there's this broad support. We know that coal-fired power plants are no longer economically viable and are slated to close. And but at the same time, and we know that renewables is occupying a larger and larger share of electricity generation. But there's a mismatch or there's a gap in public perception. So people generally don't know that. And so it feels like renewables and support for the transition can feel much more controversial or contested. And so that's kind of like a starting point that we need to challenge. So like that would be kind of one key motivator or guide for that this like toolkit is trying to address. So next. And it's not just it's not just absence of information or a lack of clear context or overview. There's misinformation around kind of new technology, and there's active disinformation, which is much more organized, and these risk delaying kind of the speed of the transition or kind of preventing communities from being able to engage to kind of be proactive in securing benefits for themselves. And so like that's kind of a much more insidious problem that the toolkit is like really excited to kind of proactively combat as well. So next slide. And ultimately getting on the front foot and kind of seeding groups and people with the winning expertise that Y2R has kind of gained and the communities that have been pushing for renewables across Victoria and across Australia uh, is going to be something that's really valuable in terms of kind of accelerating and kind of locking in as much community benefit and kind of a shared understanding of kind of like what the shift to renewables will mean and kind of letting people influence it to kind of get the best outcome for their community and their homes. So next slide. So we've spoken about organized disinformation and misinformation. And so like I think we'll go into some of the threats kind of more clearly in the next slide. Yeah. So we know that fossil fuels fund denial and delay. And so kind of one of the problems that we have to address and kind of like one of the missions for like everyone here today is kind of coming together to out-organize a fossil fuel industry that uses money, PR campaigns, and sophisticated lobbying, uh, and is able to weaponize, false claims about wind, solar, and energy storage. So next. So we've seen the kind of the gap in perception that the public has around renewables and kind of the scale and the pace of the energy transition that's already here. And so people generally believe that we're much further behind in the shift to renewables than we actually are. And people underestimate the public support that renewables enjoy. So, like, that's something that groups rooted and based in their own communities and able to kind of translate uh, these issues kind of locally are really strongly placed to kind of combat and like close that gap as well. So next slide. And many people here will have seen just how divisive and how much conflict can arise when there is, you know, let's say, controversy is generated around new projects or when projects aren't handled correctly and people don't feel heard or don't feel able to kind of voice legitimate concerns. So there's like a real danger that far too many people who would otherwise either be all right or kind of in favor feel isolated, alone, or hesitant to act. And so what we wanted to do with this toolkit and kind of with Y2R in general was kind of create the spaces like this, where people can see that there are literally, 68 other people in a room with them, whether it's virtual or not, that are in the same place, thinking about the same things and kind of like looking to apply the same lessons. And so like I think that's kind of like one of the most exciting elements that we're hoping kind of comes out of this book or this, I guess, this toolkit. So next. So yeah, so we've kind of put this together. We've explained, the context we're operating in and kind of some of the threats that we're hoping to counter. And then how it'll work is, again, it's being proactive and it's kind of, again, empowering people with the information and the confidence and the kind of the lessons that have been like drawn from uh I guess like over 7 years, almost 13 years of kind of wins and successes and kind of hard fought victories. So kind of people can, start on the front foot and kind of just keep going as quickly as they need to. So I think fundamentally we're empowering you with positive stories and the ability to tell them. And by building a national network of kind of pro-renewable supporters, we can help kind of damp down the effects and the spread of organized disinformation. We can kind of educate kind of people and kind of have a clearer picture of like what renewables mean and kind of the potential benefits that they can have for people's kind of communities, livelihoods, country, and ultimately families and the things that they love and they want to kind of preserve through this like period of great change. So next slide. So fundamentally, by getting you all together today and kind of giving you this toolkit and kind of starting kind of like a new cycle of like learning and organizing together, we really hope that we'll be able to catalyze, effective pro-renewables action, which will help us close the public perception gap, insulate communities against division by telling a more unifying and positive vision, and help secure a fast and fair renewables rollout. And ultimately, we kind of want to empower and help communities to influence the energy transition for their own benefit. So, uh, thank you very much. And I'll leave it at that. Uh,
Thank you so much,
yeah,
Kieran. We did have a couple more things.
yeah. I think I was afraid of running out of time there.
I think it's okay. Do you want to run through these last ones? They're the
Yeah,
positive
sure.
part. Let's go.
Okay,
Let's.
no worries. Yeah, sorry. I've been going on about timekeeping and then like I failed to do it myself. So, I'm just being accountable. Um, okay, so the next slide.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just having a bit of trouble with my own screen. Give me a second. Okay, I'm back.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, so we're empowering you with, I guess, a positive story, lessons. But like the one thing that me and Coco and the rest of the Y2R team that kind of helped put this together and really hope that you take away from like this meeting in particular is knowing that you are not alone. And so there's basically a guide to do this from the very beginning until kind of you are a regional, state level, or national campaign. And so it's about kind of helping you build the relationships at every step of the way and kind of build the collective power that you need to kind of make and influence the change that you want to see. And so this starts with kind of being able to tell your own story and kind of tell a convincing and kind of values uh, aligned kind of story for your community and kind of to help everyone navigate this change. So next slide. So fundamentally, we know that this is the moment to be accelerating our renewables rollout to kind of help, insulate us from kind of further kind of climate catastrophe. So, renewables is climate action. There's like a once in a generation opportunity to kind of not just be opposing kind of difficult or awful projects, but to actually be able to influence a positive vision for kind of like a new system to come. And like that's not something that people really get often. So, like this is like a once in a generation shot. And there's like a real chance to kind of bring in communities, bring in benefits for those communities, and kind of help preserve our environment and climate as well. And this only works because, you are the most trusted voice in your community, and nobody knows your community like you. So it's like you are the best advocate and the strongest voice and the most effective, persuasive, and compelling element of all of this. And so it's not just about climate action. It's not just about, generating power, but it's about influencing a new system. And you are kind of key to that. So the time to push for it is now. So we really are excited for kind of like what we're all able to do together.
Thank you so much, Kieran. Everyone can do their little clap emojis like they did before now. Well done. Thank you. I always love hearing you speak. It's so calming and insightful. So thank you so much for that reflection on the background, purpose, context, strategy for the toolkit. I'm going to run us through a little visual tour and what's next and some of the standout content. And then we're going to hear from our two regional organisers, our darlings, including Kieran. And I really hope that people will find it invigorating and interesting. If you have any questions or comments, chuck them in the chat and we will be able to refer back to them in the Q&A not long from now. Next slide, Pat. Thank you. The background of the toolkit, this is the admin. We did a couple of months of desktop research on traditional organising methods. We also did a review of Friends of the Earth's campaigning. And for those who don't know Friends of the Earth, it is an international organising collective of different member groups. And there's untold knowledge within the different groups and within Australia's collective of Friends of the Earth. It's just absolute wealth of knowledge and was really beautiful to look at in more detail. We did a review of past renewables campaigns and gas field free Vic campaigns. One of the things that I think most people who are transitioning or experiencing the conversation about renewables from an environmental movement background will come up against, and we are all, those of us who work in that space are coming up against, is we usually campaign to say no to something in the environmental movement, no to fossil fuels, no to gas, no to expansions. And we're having to shift that and now campaign for a yes, for a positive. And it is a really big shift. It is a very different approach to campaigning. There'll be people in the room who have got it down pat, and there'll be people in the room who are still trying to figure out what the best pathways forward are. So we actually took lessons from some of the no campaigns as well as some of the yes campaigns to integrate into this advice in the toolkit. It's been accentuated by grassroots community members' stories. So Daryl, Wendy, and another community advocate, Ali Gerritsen, also from the Illawarra, as well as some other faux long-standing campaigners. And the purpose of that was to give everybody an experiential journey, like something tactile that they can touch, a human experience, showing them through what the development of a campaign or the development of an organizer's journey looks like. And we hope that people can see themselves in that journey as well. It's also been illustrated by this incredible young artist, Judy Koo, and it is really purposeful. We spent quite a lot of time with Judy working on the storyline of the illustrations. So I hope that for those who are visual learners like myself, it's really reflective of the journey and the experience of the toolkit, and the information is given to you in a way that's helpful and visually stimulating. Next slide, please. So the toolkit is designed to be shared. I love the idea of somebody like Daryl in Good for the Gong, or myself when I co-founded Good for the Gong with people in the Illawarra. We were trying to like figure out how to bring the rest of the community along with us. And there were people who were joining Good for the Gong and didn't have any organizing experience. And for me, this toolkit would have been the most helpful thing to have, to like sit beside somebody and talk through, like, this is actually what organizing looks like. This is how, a strategy can be developed, or what other aspects do you have questions about? How do we organize with our volunteers? How do we make them feel safe? How do we find alliances? How do we combat these really tricky conversations about mis and disinformation? So it is designed to be used together. It's designed to be shared with people in your groups, or, just, your mum, your neighbor, anybody who can just jump in at any part of their journey in the toolkit. We also have the National Organisers Network. So this is a group, right now we have about 8 different grassroots community groups involved who are working specifically on renewables. They do lots of other things as well, as most regional groups do. But we specifically started the Regional Organisers Network to be able to help advance questions, support, skills, specifically around renewables organising, because we saw that that was like a bit of a gap in where there was support in the network of support that's out there for grassroots groups. And a big part of that is also about bringing the groups together to be able to support each other as well. And it's been a really, really beautiful journey. And anybody in the room who's interested in doing some renewables organising or wants to learn more, please feel free to join the Organisers Network. We'll put that in the chat as well. There's a link to sign up. And then the final part of the toolkit body of work is that we're going to be doing a community road trip where we will be doing mini workshops with groups specifically catered to issues that are coming up for them in their area. So if we go to the next slide, there are 3 sets of 3 workshops that we've developed so far from the feedback from community groups we work with. These are issues that come up most for them. They're the biggest friction points that are happening. And we're going to keep building on these workshops. So we will add more. So we've got combating mis and disinformation, building groups and volunteers, and communicating your story and vision. Like I said, these are just frameworks for the workshops. We will also work with community members and groups who want us to come and work with them in their community, and we'll tailor the information specifically to your area. Another one we're working on at the moment is about how to read the environmental survey papers from renewable projects, how to assess if a project is worth supporting, and then how to do the submission process to the projects as well. I think that's all of my slides. If you want to stop sharing, Pat, and I will do a visual tour of the toolkit. Hi, everybody's faces. It's so nice to see you all. All right. So, Pat, have you been able to put the link to the toolkit in the chat yet? I can't see the chat.
I'll just do that
Yeah.
now.
Cool. Pat or Anna, someone's on it.
It's in there, yeah.
Thank you. So you will have the link in there. You can go to the link and you can download a copy and feel free to share it any way you'd like to. This is one of our beautiful illustrations going from starting with an idea, starting conversations, building networks, and winning for community, the whole organizing journey. There's 5 chapters. One is introduction, talking that speaks to the power of voices, the power of an individual voice, but also how powerful it is when we bring people into collective. We're not going to be able to like dramatically change or dramatically influence this new industry and what this looks like for communities and for nature if we do it alone. We all have to come together and we all need to collectively work on this. And as we've seen before in Australian history and international history, but probably most recently, marriage equality as an example, when we come together, we can be incredibly powerful. And it's important that we make changes to this industry from the ground up. And support this industry and the good examples of it. So that's also where coming together is, but there's also a lot of strategy in there. There's a lot of information about how to reach different areas of your community, how to empower leaders and build leadership in your own group or with people around you, how to start a group if you're feeling solo in your community and you want to figure out how to find people and develop a group in the first place. And campaigning, which is about developing a strategy and looking at tactics and combating mis and disinformation. This was a big chapter in there because it is one of the biggest topics that come up as a friction point around renewable energy. And I live regionally. I've lived regionally my whole life, and all the groups that we work with live regionally. And being in a regional area, trying to exist and have something to say when mis and disinformation is being spread or is causing friction in the community is a really, really, really challenging place to be. It can feel unsafe. It can feel really harsh and harmful. It can feel like you can't step up and let your voice be heard without that having unnecessary consequences. So we wanted to put a lot of care into that piece, and we want to be able to help support people through that because it's really important that we do get to have a say and that we do get our voices heard. And then winning campaigns, which really is just about celebrating your wins. So Daryl mentioned that his favorite parts were about building the group and building leadership. We were talking today about how Daryl's also the facts that stick. There's little bits of information throughout there, as well as games and things you can, and strategy pieces that you can do with your groups. But for Daryl, it was really important to like consider and look at how we can keep building more momentum with people around you in your own communities and wider than your communities as well. Which is also one of my favorite parts. So we've got a few case studies too. We've got lessons from the Gasfield Free campaign, which was an amazing expression of bringing community together over something that they disagreed with in this circumstance, but it really came from a basis of community value. And I think that's a real lesson to take in organising, specifically around renewables, because we want this new landscape of energy to reflect our community values, and we want it to benefit our communities, and we want it to benefit nature, and we want it to look like what we care about. So that's a really beautiful example. And we've got our organizer journeys here with Wendy, Daryl, Ali, and we've got more case studies. It's very visual. I hope that's really helpful for people. There's quite a lot of information and advice around getting through those difficult conversations, but also framing conversations. So I'm sure that everybody who's had like a challenging conversation with, I don't know, Uncle Bruce at the Christmas party, and they're kind of stagnantly against renewables for some reason, or some other topic that you're trying to kind of create some shift around. So there's a bit of information in there about how to work with escalation or agitation, about how to speak to people through values, how we can align on values, and we can talk to people in a way that brings us together instead of separates us, which is really what a lot of the opposition tactics are about, creating division. And I think one of the most beautiful things about Yes organizing is it's trying to bring people back together. Yes, so community mapping, power mapping, campaigning. We've got lots of fun stuff in there. I'm going to let you read through it yourself because it is a lot of information, and it really is designed so that you can pick it up wherever it works best for you. One of the fun additions that we've done are things like misinfo bingo. We've also got a number of misinformation case studies where people have used different tactics in different communities to reflect, to react and respond to misinformation. Positive messaging, relational organizing, another fun game. So I know that's just like a run through. I think it's really important also to recognize that there's a number of other amazing toolkits out there through different groups like Community Power Agency. Realliance has some amazing work. We've got ACF has some amazing work, NCC. We've got so many amazing organizations out there. We've listed some of them in here, but you'll find them if you Google it as well. But you can also reach out to us to find out more. But if we use all of these things together in combination, we've actually got such a breadth of knowledge that can really help us all take the best steps forward for organizing around renewables. Now, I just want to see if I can share these slides without it stuffing up my bad internet again. And I want to share. Yes, it's working. Great. I want to share what's next. So, first of all, I just want to acknowledge that you are going to hear more from our organisers soon. And then I really want to have like a beautiful chat afterwards where we can answer questions and we can delve a bit deeper. Because right now we are going top level. This is like very surface level information about the toolkit, but also the rest of the work that sits underneath that we do. We can't fit all of that work, support, resourcing, advice, collaboration with communities that we do in a toolkit. So this is very top level. And we really want to encourage having further and deeper conversations and being able to see where we might be able to help support people and their communities. But one of those ways is that we're going to take the toolkit on a road trip. We're going to originally it was going to be an actual road trip, but now with the gas prices and diesel petrol prices, it's not going to look like that. But we are going to be going to Gippsland, North and Northwest Victoria, New South Wales, so Central West Arana, Eden Monaro, Hunter, probably Illawarra too, and maybe Queensland, hopefully. If there's anyone from Queensland who wants us to come up and visit, we'd love to come. And We would also like to hear from any other communities that would like us to come and we could co-host a workshop with you. We could come and work on content specifically for your area where you might need any help, any friction points in your organizing, any specific projects that are coming up, any specific mis or disinformation, any strategy that you want to work on, maybe even just encouraging a group that you're in to move from working on electrification to considering the bigger large scale projects that might be coming up in your area or in the region. Because as these big projects are coming up, these conversations are going to happen, and we need to be prepared to be able to hold the community in that conversation. So really keen to hear from anybody. And if you're in any of those areas, please also reach out, because we want to be collaboratively developing these trips with everyone in their communities. So it's not just us coming in, it's us working with locals to figure out what they need and delivering that in collaboration with the local community. So there should be a link in the chat, but again, I can't see the chat. If not, I'll put it in there after. And now I'm going to hand over to the best part of the night, which is Wendy Farmer and then Daryl. So you've got 10 minutes each, and I will pass to you first, Wendy. Thank you for listening.
I should take my mute off. Yeah, thanks everybody for being here tonight. And 10 minutes, I could take a few weeks to actually tell my story, so I won't do that. Many of you will know me from the Hazelwood Mine Fire and voice, so and my community advocacy that started there. Really wanting answers, wanting to know what we're experiencing and why things were done in certain ways. It became a community fight. It actually felt like a David and Goliath, and we would discuss that at the time. We were having a David and Goliath. We were surviving. At the time, I remember being invited into a discussion in the environment movement. I went down to Melbourne. So everybody, I'm in Gippsland, so a 2-hour trip down to Melbourne. But I felt really alone in that room. Everybody was there. They were stopping this or they were stopping that, or they had a Adani they were stopping, and, all important things. But at the time, we were surviving. We were actually surviving, and we were starting to question large industry and governments. Why are you doing this the way you are? And why aren't you helping the people on the ground? But we also felt really limited to who we could, like, we didn't know the answers. We didn't have a handbook for sure. We didn't have a toolkit, but we also, we had very few contacts. At the time, the first inquiry had happened. The inquiry findings were handed out, and it was basically, it felt like a game of poison ball. All the agencies did the right thing. The CFA did what they could, and the emergency services did what they could, and the councils did what they could. The community didn't leave. They ended up with the poison ball. They stayed. They suffered the consequences of the Hazelwood Mine Fire. So we at the time, we thought, hang on, this isn't fair. Like, you can't blame the community for getting sick when you told them it's okay to stay there. And so we kept pushing. We kept saying we need more answers. We need to be involved in this. We're not walking away. We called for the inquiry to be reopened because, as I said, it just wasn't good enough for first inquiry. And in that inquiry, we dealt with, there were several topics, and some of those topics were the mine rehabilitation of the mines across Victoria. There'd never been a plan for mine rehabilitation. There was very small bonds on those, and basically it would have been easier for the companies to walk away, and that wasn't going to be suitable for our communities. But one of the big things that it did look at is the environmental and health impacts of the fire. What burning coal for 45 days did to our communities and to our environment. But it also showed that we needed more. We needed to be able to plan for a future. There was lots of health impacts already from even before the mine fire. And the community needed to actually be able to plan for something in as they went forward. We couldn't just say, well, we've had privatisation, we know that we've been destroyed, but now we have nothing. We're happy to sit with that. So through this time, we were careful on who we worked with. We didn't know who to trust, who was safe to work with, but we actually had some amazing people. So I'm just going to go back to my notes. I've got all these notes, and of course, you guys start right off track straight away. Through this time, we were really careful who we worked with, who we trusted. We had some great people step forward to support us, whether it was learning to write a media release. I had finished, I should say to people, I did Unite at school. It's not a bad thing. It just shows that anybody can actually learn these things and pick up these things. Running a meeting, talking to others, how to do social media, how to use Twitter, handles at the time. They were really valuable for the work that we had to do. But without this support, I don't think we would have got as far as we got. We learned a lot. They gave us the many tools that we needed. After the inquiries, and during that time, we also pushed hard to make sure that the power station or the Hazelwood owners were taken to court. And, the EPA and WorkSafe, they were the biggest cases that any of them had ever done. And they won them. And it was a big thing for Victoria to know that they could hold such a large company to court or to account, but because community had pushed for it. And what I'm just really demonstrating there is community just stood up and didn't get down. We just kept saying, this is what we needed. Here's our problem. We have a solution. We've got to keep going. We could have stopped after the inquiries and the court cases. We could have walked away. We actually talked to each other and went, is it time to stop? And we just looked at each other and said, we've got so much more work to do. As I said, our community knew we had problems. We knew what the problems were, but nobody was talking about solutions. So Voices of the Valley started looking at how our community could transition. What would be needed? We created a transition plan. We literally created a transition plan. It's still on our website now because nobody was talking about what would happen. We knocked on doors, we spoke to councils, we spoke to governments, we spoke to everybody, and we kept talking about the transition plan. A plan that empowered communities. We knew that coal-fired power stations had health impacts on our health, but we also knew that these power stations were old, they would close, and we had an opportunity to create something we didn't want to be left behind. Sorry, to create something we didn't want to be left behind. That opportunity was in renewable energy. While we needed investment in larger renewable energy systems, our communities and our households could be part of the energy system. Distributed energy is energy security. Would you believe it? The rest of my notes have disappeared for a sec. Just bear with me for half a minute. Don't you love that?
Do you want to just chat, Wendy? Because I know you're so good off the cuff.
Yeah.
If you can find them. Just offer.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. No, I can't. So we actually really did. When we started talking about renewable energy in our community, people would say to us, oh, that's never going to happen. We're going to have coal forever. But we knew that, we couldn't, that wasn't going to be the answer, that we weren't going to. Yeah, we knew that the old system wasn't serving us, not environmentally, not economically, and certainly not in terms of health. And we also knew that change was coming, whether we were ready or not. So we made a decision. If the transition was coming, then we had to be part of the opportunity. We had to be part of it. A transition doesn't happen by accident. It happens when communities stand up and say, We deserve better, and we're ready to be part of it. Renewable energy became the opportunity we could shape, not something done to us, but something we could be part of. We saw that clean energy wasn't just about technology. It was about our dignity, fairness, and the right to breathe clean air and have secure jobs. We understood that large-scale renewable projects would be part of the picture, but small projects were really important as well. Those solar panels on our rooftops, the batteries in our homes, the best batteries distributed around the grid, they were all part of the solution. It strengthens communities. It just makes sense. It keeps the lights on. It keeps money in the region. And it keeps power in our hands.
What a statement.
This wasn't just about Latrobe Valley. It wasn't just a Latrobe Valley issue. Regions right across Australia are facing the same things. They're the same, they're different, but they're the same. I've had the privilege through some of my work to actually go to a lot of other coal mining areas. And our strength grows when we work together. When we work together, we become stronger. We bring our knowledge, we bring our courage, we bring our fears and our lived experiences together. There's nothing we cannot shape. We can do it together. Too often the stories of renewable energy are in the conference rooms. They're great discussions. I go to lots of conferences, but we've got to take them out to the regions. We've got to take them to the people on the ground. Some of the work that Voices of the Valley has done, and with Yes2Renewables, people may be aware of Nanas Against Nuclear, that after the nuclear debate became Nanas for Action. We actually speak to these companies. We work with them. We actually talk about transition. We talk about the transmission. We talk about the best batteries. We listen to a proposal about a wind farm. We get involved. We shape the future that we want to see. We get out on the street. We talk to the people on the street. You know what? The discussion on the street to those people is very different than on social media. Actually, there's been many times that I've just wanted to walk away and say, this is way too hard. But it's not too hard when we do it together, because we have other people to lift us up. We have other people to gain strength from when we're in that area of not being able to gain strength. I did put a timer on Coco and I forgot to press the button. You know, some of those discussions on the street are just so valuable, because we ask people why they believe a certain way. And when we start talking about that, we don't tell them they're wrong. We discuss it and we leave them with critical thinking, that they walk away from our conversation thinking about what was said and how things can be different. The transition ahead is not just about energy, it's about justice, dignity, and the right to thrive for our communities. Let's stand together, let's lead together, because when we work together, truly together, there is nothing beyond our reach. Thanks, everyone.
What an ending. Very powerful, Wendy. You always leave me with such a light feeling of empowerment. It's so beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing. Wendy talks herself down. She is like a fierce organizer in Gippsland and very much gets inside those boardrooms and tells decision makers exactly what they need to hear from the community. And, you know, that's just like such a beautiful journey from somebody who didn't do any organizing to someone who goes into these decision-making spaces and gives them an elbow when they need to be elbowed, or, you know, helps negotiate those changes when those options are available. And yeah, amazing work, Wendy. Very proud of you. Daryl, your turn.
I wish I'd have gone first now.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I told you. Hard act to follow.
Yeah, yeah.
7:13. You got
Anyway,
10 minutes. Let's go.
so I've worked for 42 years in coal mines before I finally retired, nearly 5.5 years ago now. In back in Lithgow and in the Illawarra. Um, I changed because there were a few reasons. There was the physical changes that were happening to the climate. There were all the reports that the scientists were coming out, that scientists were bringing out. Kids, we've got 3 adult children, 4 little grandkids, and I really want to make a better world for them. And I figure that after working for 42 years in a coal mine, I've got a long way to go to be carbon neutral. So I've got some work to do. Anyway, so I'll just talk a little bit about how I got there and why groups really, really work for me. So I started out and I was really passionate about renewables, but renewables in areas where fossil fuel industry will shut down because I saw what had happened in the US, and there was all these terrible, terrible communities there where they just shut it down and not done anything about it. And the thing is about fossil fuel industries, they will close. We down here in the Illawarra, it's a little bit different to Gippsland and the Hunter, and people say it's not happening. I've been down here since 2009, and since that time, 4 coal mines have shut down here. 3 of them I worked at. Maybe there's a factor. Anyway, who knows? Anyway, but 88% of our coal is exported. So that means that when the rest of the world changes, and the rest of the world is changing, 88% of our coal workers will be out of work. There's nothing we can do about that. You can say, yeah, we'll put more coal mines in. We won't sell it because our coal-fired power stations are shutting as well. And so the other thing that I really wanted to try and do was try and bridge a lot of gaps that I saw. So there's the massive age gap. I'm a boomer, obviously, and the difference between the young people and their issues and older people and their issues. And I tried to get people to see that we all have issues, but we all should come together to fight for what is really good and what will make a better community. Also, the gender gap, try and make it gender, so we're so equal in all that we do. Although I will say, and I love this, women are leading the world in renewables, getting the changes in our world, and I just love that. Anyway, we've had our fun, us patriarchs. And also to try and get the gap between the environmental people and the fossil fuel people, try and stop that friction there, so that people in the fossil fuel industry could see that people were in the environment industry were actually, well, not the industry, were actually trying to get them other jobs. So the renewables will keep them engaged. We'll also keep communities really vibrant. So many of these places will just shut, and like Lithgow will be a ghost town when the coal mines and the power stations shut. So, but the problem that I encountered first off was it was just me. I was just this old dude, ex-coal miner, who something had gone wrong with him, and he decided he wanted to go all out on renewables. So how do I get heard? It was really, really hard, and it was really frustrating. That is where the power of connecting came in, and I did a radio interview of the local ABC down here, and Yael Stone, who was on here earlier, but she's gone, so I can talk about it, which is great. She was listening, and so she got in contact with me, and she was doing High Neighbour at the time. We're trying to launch High Neighbour, and so I got very, very involved with High Neighbour and did a lot of work with Yael. And so I did a lot of. She came out and videoed me talking about things and everything. So people saw that, and then other people would see things. So I would do other interviews, and then I was starting to write a few articles in papers, and so that became more and more. And I even did an interview with Sky News once. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done in my whole life. It was anyway, it was good in a way. So the more that I got involved in that, the more people I learned, and or not learned, but I met with, and so many more doors open, and that led to at one stage. I ended up down at Canberra in Parliament, talking to the Department of Skills and Training there. And that was really good because I really wanted to do an audit on what skills we've got in the Illawarra and where the gaps in the training was for all these renewables. And they were great. And they listened and they told me it was really good, but they couldn't help. And they didn't have any money to do it themselves. So that was a problem because it was just me. So anyway, it was a great idea, but no, nothing. So that one thing that came out of that was that I met the people from Beyond Zero Emissions, and they helped me a lot with my submission when I put it to that department. And they've still got a really good ongoing relationship with them. So that's another, more people that I'm building communication and alliances with, and that all helps. It helps me a lot. And then came the offshore wind down here, and all that went with that, and all the people who weren't in favour of it. And then Good for the Gong were formed, as Coco said earlier. And Good for the Gong were combating misinformation and trying to get the right information out there so that people could make an informed opinion. And so I ended up doing became more and more, a lot of media work with Good for the Gong. So I wrote articles and did radio interviews and talks and on TV, whatever. Anyway, but it was good because I got to what I was trying to do really aligned with what Good for the Gong were doing. So it was about renewables at the time. It was about an offshore wind farm, renewables to replace this. So it went great. So in all that too, I got to push my own little agenda a bit, so I could talk about that from that point of view, but also I could talk about it from why it should happen, why it should be good, not just, yes, we want this or we don't. The good thing about it. And the great thing about a group, this is where a group is vital. So when you're on your own, you come home of the night and drink far too much wine because you're just depressed. Anyway, but you get in a group, you get similarly aligned people. So you find your people and then you get in with them. You've got different people to do different tasks. I am terrible at some things, absolutely terrible. But there are people in say a group like Good for the Gong or in High Neighbour that are really good at it. So they do it. But the big one for me is the support and the encouragement that you get from a group. And so when you're down, someone else isn't. Someone else is up. They've just had a win somewhere and they're all bubbly and say we lift each other back up. And I think that's really important because it's really frustrating and really demoralizing at times. Fossil fuel industries have one aim, and that's to make sure that they keep making money. And they don't care about us. We care. But it's really hard because they've got millions and millions of dollars behind them. So my advice for people who aren't there yet or who aren't in groups, find your people, find the people that you align with. And then for someone like me, I don't protest about shutting coal mines because I can't really go and talk to coal miners when I've been standing out protesting about we should shut coal mines. So I don't do that, but other groups do protest, and it's really important. And it's really important for every little bit of that jigsaw puzzle to come together. And you can evolve. I have evolved a lot in what I'm trying to do. I'm still trying to do the same sort of thing, but the reasons are behind it are different. And you learn how you can get things to work and how you don't get things to work. And groups have different perspectives too, which is great because no one person has the answer for everything. So I might think I know everything, but I don't. So I'd like to finish on, well, it was a little bit after a good news story. So a few years ago, Yale and I went to the TAFE in New South Wales was trying to work out how they could change and how they could get back on board and train in renewables and do whatever. And so it was down here at the Illawarra and it was organised by the TAFE and also the uni. And it was like frustrating, massively frustrating because they had all these issues that TAFE had and everything. And we had to bring 10,000 fly out people in there. And I was just banging on about why don't we train people here? Why don't we show them what we need to do? Why don't we show them what can happen down here? Why don't we train in that? Why don't you set your training up to it? Why don't you do some examples? And so we went away from that. And then 6 months later, the woman who ran it rang me up and she said, Darryl, I've got some good news for you. And I said, She said, because of what you and Yael said, we're going to do some buses and we're going to do these buses and we're going to have a renewable bus. I went, wow. And I was like all excited. And that was it. And then High Nova had an event a few weeks ago. And Yael didn't tell me this, but anyway, she knew. But anyway, so when I got down there, I walked in. Here was this bus. And it's a bus filled with renewables, and you can get on all interactive stuff for kids and everything. And it's an EV and it drives around the place. And the guy came out and said, "Hi, Daryl, here's your bus." And I was like, it was like this moment when you think, wow, that will do me. That is it. So for all the times that you don't achieve anything, your one conversation might change one person's thought. And you're not trying to jam it down your throat, and you don't do it that way, but it might change someone's opinion. It might change some legislation. It might change a whole manner of things. So, but the way you have to do it, you've got to listen to other people. You've got to take their opinions seriously. You've got to hold firm to what you want, but you really have to consider everything and never stop. Just never stop, because what we're doing is super important. And I must say, I have rarely met a group of people that are as caring and supportive as the people I've met since I've started doing this. And that is just wonderful. I didn't have something else to say, but I've run out of time. Anyway, thank you.
Is it another amazing win? Because I want to hear that. That was so good.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Thank you so much, Daryl. I'm stoked to hear about that. Just more background. Daryl has been advocating in the Illawarra for skills transition with High Neighbour for what, 2 years, 2.5, 3 years now?
Three, whatever. Yeah, some
That's
four,
massive. That's so good.
Yeah, it was just lovely, you know. Yeah, great moment.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I was just trying to reply to the really exciting Southeast Queensland, Colin. I'm from Coolum. I'll come up. So amazing. Thank you so much. It's your stories are always so powerful. They always re-inspire me, because sometimes when you're dealing with climate change every day, it can be very painful and can feel a bit depressing sometimes. But it's these moments where you're reconnecting with the people around you who are all working to like create this change that for me uplift me so powerfully and keep my momentum going as well.
Good.
I'd like to open the room for questions. If anybody would like to come off mute and ask a question. I know there's been a couple in the chat, so if anyone wants to have the confidence to speak to that, or anyone else who wants to jump in.
Shall I read one that came through in the chat, Coco? Is that?
Yeah.
I thought Megan had a great question, which was for Wendy, but probably Daryl can also weigh in on this as well. The question is, where did your groups find the confidence to take on the battle? How did you know that change was coming?
Megan, I really don't know how we had confidence. When we started, as I said, we were surviving. We were fighting to survive. And so I guess that's where we started. I remember standing, we organised a rally. Actually, my daughter challenged me and said, "Well, what are you going to do, Mum?" And I was like, "What do you mean? What am I going to do? How can I do anything?" And standing at a rally, we had organised 1,200 people turned up on, this was a group that came together. A neighbour would say, "I can print something," or someone from another town would say, "I can give you some money for printing." We never took money, or "I can do this." The old lady that used to always be around when I'd go to deliver some handouts to say that we were having a rally or something, we just got together. And at this particular rally, I wasn't going to say anything. and something was said, and I had to get up on the platform and say something. I had to actually respond to it. And it was how the health minister had actually, so the health minister of Victoria, Rosemary Lester, had treated the people and what she'd said, that they didn't know what was in the smoke. And they couldn't do anything. And the health, all advice was, if you don't know what is in the smoke, you actually have to take the precautionary measure. And just there was a moment there where I felt that the audience were going to actually attack me, like 1,200 people in the audience, because I mentioned Rosemary Lester's name, and I put my hand up and I just went, but wait, together we can change this. It was a point that I don't even know how, as I put in the comments before, I was a shy person. But we just knew that we had to keep going. We actually had to get the answers. So, that was a strength. But it hasn't always been easy. There's been many tears and many times that we've needed support and many times that I wanted to walk away. But just knowing that the people do have the power, but it's not just about saying we have a problem. It is about creating those solutions. And that's what Voices of the Valley has really been recognised for, the work that we've done in that creating solutions. If that answers your question.
I think another important thing to note with Megan is that, Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, you're from the Hunter, from Upper Hunter, and they are also going through such a similar transition experience as Gippsland. It'd be really cool to join those conversations a bit more, because I know that there's a few people from the Hunter in the room, and we've been chatting recently about that shift is quite tense, and especially the shift for workers, but also now the transmission lines and other areas that are coming up as points of friction. I think that's a really great conversation we should try and expand on at a different time.
I think, sorry,
go Wendy.
Coco, the rest of that question was, how did we know change was coming? We could see it, but we also could see in the people that we needed something. There was a lot of mental health issues, and we knew that something had to change in the job sector there. And so while we would say to council, something's going to change, whether it's in 3 years, 10 years or 20 years, we need to have a plan. We need to know where we're going. And that was how we always framed it. If it was 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, it takes us 10 years to decide on even where we're going to build a road, let alone build the road. And so that's how we started talking about it, not saying that it's going to close tomorrow. We've never said to close. We've also always said to transition. I've been to the Hunter a few times, they've got the same sort of issues.
Yeah, definitely. That was a really good indicator point there, Wendy. Kerry, you have a question.
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity to have some sort of social network for those of us involved, that we can share some of the arguments that we're getting, the questions that we're getting, and what we're finding works in discussions. I have found some articles that have really taken my breath away, a wind turbine that's been developed that looks like an air conditioning unit that sits on top of buildings to power the whole building. If I'm talking about renewables, I often get the usual bullshit, that wind vanes, destroy so many or kill birds and things like that. And I had one like that the other day, and I turned around and I said, "Oh, and how many animals do you think are killed by fires and floods every year?" Things like that.
Yeah.
But we can anticipate a lot of the arguments, and I think it's the fossil fuel industry that's spreading them, about the fact that renewables like solar panels and everything create rubbish, rather than looking at them as being able to be recycled. So it would be really great if we as a group could have somewhere that we can share some of the, some of the things that we've learned along the path.
We certainly do have that. Well, we have two options, and I'm going to ask Anna or Pat to put the links in the chat because I want to pay attention to you. We've got the Yes2Renewables National Organisers Network, and just to outline that again, that is a group of, we are holding the space for grassroots groups across different areas of Australia who are all coming up against these frictions when they're talking about renewables or organizing in support of renewables. And I mean, our last session, we have it once a month. It's for an hour and a half now because there's so much like conversation that people want to have and share about these friction points that are coming up and sharing resources. We get experts in when community groups are asking for specific information. We've developed, for example, BESS fact sheets, battery storage fact sheets, because we had some opposition coming up in Gippsland as well as in New South Wales. And it's been a really inspiring and a really helpful space for people. We've had new groups come in who originally were kind of like, I don't really have the confidence to organize around large scale renewables. I don't know how to have that conversation, and who now feel more confident to be able to have that conversation and feel like they have the resources behind them, and empowerment. Yes, Helen, that's where we get all out. We ask you guys what you need in fact sheets and we make them and we give them back to you. And yeah, it's a really beautiful space. And last week we just ended up having a really wonderful chat about how people were responding to misinformation and responding to the opportunities for battery storage as the topic of last week, I think it was. And yeah, it was wonderful. And I really would love to invite anybody here who wants to be a part of that, to join. Just fill out your information in that website. But we also have a Facebook group as well. So when you fill out the info in that RSVP form, I'll send the information for the meetings and for the Facebook group, and you can come and join in and share those things together. But the other beautiful part about it is that we're all able to like join, like I think Daryl was saying and Kieran was saying, seeing that there's like 25, 30 other people who are experiencing the same things as you and who are also really supportive of renewables and are trying to figure out the best way to bring everybody in that community along with that journey is like a really powerful moment that helps us keep going too. So did anybody have any other questions or any questions for Kieran? Because he's a wealth of knowledge too. Or any comments for discussion? There were other questions in the chat, I think, Anna. Maybe?
I got one, Coco.
Yeah, get there, Barry.
Coco, I'm just wondering, how do you allay the fears of farmers when they're trying to grow crops and they've got things in their paddock which are hard to negotiate, perhaps infrastructure, they have clean farming practices and they come along with maybe solar panels next door, or their rules apply that if somebody wants to put solar panels up and you want to do a structure across the road, you're not able to because within a buffer zone. And so farmers are pretty upset about all those things. How do we get around those things, and what do we say to the farmers when down the track they've got to be decommissioned in 20 or 30 years' time? Who decommissions those projects? And, is there a better way to do the renewables rather than put them on farmland, I guess? Yeah, because, we haven't limited, good land is limited, and people don't want towers or turbines in front of their house and the paddock, particularly, maybe not. And it's hard to, as I said, hard to negotiate the infrastructure in the paddock.
Yeah, it's always a negotiation, and as it should be, a conversation between all of the parties involved. And people's land use is like situational, right? There's a lot in that question. And in some circumstances, land use is really suitable for renewables, and in other and farmland use, and in other circumstances it might not be. So each of those assessments need to be done, one by one. I think allaying the fears of farmers, there's a lot of case studies of farmers having really positive experiences with renewables on their land. Realliance has quite a lot of video content of them working with farmers and Farmers for Climate. There's definitely some points of serious friction that come up, in Northwest Victoria. There's some serious friction points around different forms of infrastructure on farming land. And those concerns are really valid. They're real fears. They're real concerns that people are feeling. And though they need to be properly considered and spoken to. But we also have those great examples of when farmers have had a really positive experience of working with renewables on their land, and that it's become a drought protector, and it's actually benefited their economic dynamics of their land. So there's you've added all of those components into the question, and I can only speak to some of them because I'm not an expert in that. But it does really need to be a considered approach. And farming land, it does most of the time, depending on the type of technology, it does only use up a small amount of land. And the farmer who is hosting it has made that choice and is having a positive economic experience of it in most cases. With decommissioning, again, it's project by project, but what should be happening is that the companies should be decommissioning their projects, but that's in large scale infrastructure. If a farmer's doing their own solar power, that's different. So yeah, it looks a bit different. And I know Cam might still be on the call, and Pat, who both have good experience in this area as well, and Kieran, just in case you wanted to add anything to the farming and renewables conversation.
Just to say that there's a lot of positive feedback from farmers. Like they see solar as almost like an additional crop or resilience. So, people have found that, they're getting paid by solar projects to graze their sheep to kind of keep the weeds out of the way. So, it's like additional income streams, more resilience. And there's, in terms of land use, you can actually kind of grow and host, solar at the same time. So there's not a big a conflict as you would imagine. So I think at a time of real precarity and kind of insecurity, having more resilience is kind of really important to kind of people, especially in an industry like farming. And so kind of keeping costs down on the one hand and opening up an extra line of income and kind of it's something that is a bit of a win-win. And then obviously there's more experiences that I think Pat and the others would be able to speak to as well.
Can I respond to it also? I think sometimes, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of that misinformation has created a lot of fear. So there's not that critically thinking of looking at both sides of it and somewhere in the middle. And I think that's where, people have to actually go into that middle and actually have a discussion about what each thing means. And, when we see some people really push against something, it's because they know what they know and they don't know the other side of the story. So I think it is really getting that lot together. We have a local thing here where, we're having one council say, but it's farmland and we don't want to take up farmland while they're doing massive developments of everything else, and anything else is allowed unless it's renewable energy, basically. So, it's really getting that into that discussion.
Yeah, Elias, I don't know if I've pronounced your name properly. has pointed out also that there's federal codes for decommissioning as well as state-based codes as well, and policies around that. I've only seen this decommissioning issue come up with one example, really, which was a solar heat project that kind of went bust and they haven't decommissioned it properly. But you'll find that with most of the actual renewables projects, they are being decommissioned properly. And now we are being able to recycle and reuse absolute majority of materials, which is a really beneficial thing. Somebody else has posted in the chat our visit to the recycling centre, solar recycling centre in Gippsland, which is like the biggest one in Australia, which is a really incredible experience to look at as well. And Shannon, did you have your hand up before? No?
Yeah, I did, but probably better for another time. Really, my question was going to be, how do we get the silent majority? Because there's a lot of people that are either like us and quite adamant about the positives, and the other side, they're promulgating disinformation and very anti. And I know the statistics show that there seems to be a majority of people that are for it. My personal encounters with other people is they get a bit overwhelmed with my enthusiasm, I guess. And a lot of people just got shit going on with their lives, or they don't want to engage in the debate. And so, for another time, I just would really benefit from understanding how do we reach those people. And I put something in the chat earlier. It's like, I think that majority don't want to hear the technical aspects of climate science or biodiversity threat, but they probably share the same values as all of us. So I think there's might be a psychological pathway there, that how do we draw some great Australiana, or what are the values that we all hold that can raise people's voices or appeal to people that might otherwise be just overwhelmed, not capable of understanding the science, or they watch, they're like my parents and they just watch way too much Fox News and they've been brainwashed by the Murdoch press. How do we engage with those people? Because despite some of them in my mind being morons, that they have great values. And I think the more that we can agree on the common things that we share, the better it is that we can, or the easier it is we can bring them into the camp. Sorry, I talked way too long after saying I wasn't going to.
No, it's a really good question. And I think Kieran is going to answer that, because you've put something in the chat that's absolutely great answer. I just want to note that we have gone over time. So if people need to leave, that's totally fine. Let's get Kieran's answer and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I would say the answer is in the toolkit, so don't worry. So if people have to jump off, please just download it, read it, and kind of flick through to the problem that you're having. But I think before you get into debate, it's just kind of leading with questions, understanding where people are coming from. Like, they may be excited or they may be worried, and there's like deep insecurity there. So kind of just like getting that understanding, like also kind of like leading with humor, kind of just listening, showing up. That's kind of like, these are the important like groundwork before kind of being able to kind of persuade. And like, I'm sure Wendy is going to jump in with a much more clear answer as well.
Thanks for dobbing me in there. I think one of the things, Shannon, we've really seen is when we've gone to the streets and we're actually just having those chats, not telling people they're wrong, but actually asking why they believe it, and just sort of putting in suggestions. So what do they think about, why do they think about this? Why, what about if? And this could happen alongside it, and they start thinking differently, because people believe what they read, they believe what they see. And if they're reading, you know, if they're watching, let's say Sky News, anybody here from Sky News? That's okay. Hi. You know, that's what they know. They just don't know other. So when you start talking about other things, but not telling them they're wrong, they're starting to think about other things. So you know, nuclear debate was really one of those really big things that we had to learn how to speak to different people and actually not throw our point. You know, the last thing we could do is say climate change is real, and if we don't do anything, we're gonna, you know, this is going to be really bad, blah, blah, blah. It didn't work. People walked away going, I can't hear those people. When we started asking them, hearing them, listening to them, we actually found that we started to create that conversation change. I think that'd be a really good one for a community organisers night, actually, that bigger discussion.
Yeah. Let's book that in for next month's community national network meeting if anyone wants to join us. And we'll have a more in-depth conversation about values-driven conversations. Wendy's actually incredibly good at it. So she'll give us some examples. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry that we've gone over time. I got too excited about your questions and responding to them. I really appreciate having you all here. And please download the toolkit and share it with your networks. Also, please, if Anna, would you mind chucking all the links back in the chat at the bottom? Just the sign up to the network, download the toolkit, email me if you want to chat. And then also RSVP to have us come collaborate with you to share a workshop, a conversation, some drinks at the pub with your group, whatever you want it to look like in your community. And then we can figure out how we can best help you and help advance these conversations. Everybody's chucking so many resources into the chat too. So I'll see
Can we
if
make sure we save that chat?
yeah, I think we'll save the chat, we'll pull the resources and we'll put that in the response email as well, the follow-up email. Thank you, everybody. Feel free to stay or leave.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so
everyone.
much. Goodbye, everyone.